Are annual fee credit cards worth it? Yes. End of story. Thanks for watching. Just kidding. I wish it was that easy, but obviously there are a lot of nuances to this topic that I want to discuss in this video here today. You may be starting to catch a theme with these Wednesday uploads where I want to make this just a very conversational style of video where I'm basically just talking to y'all face to face, because in my opinion, me talking off the cuff is honestly the best way to understand my thought processes behind these, things that we talk about on a daily basis. So if you do like this type of content, please let me know down below, because I'd love to continue to make videos just like this. But in this video, I'm going to start by explaining what an annual fee is exactly for those that just don't have an idea yet. And then I want to break down both sides of the coin on this argument as to whether or not they're worth it. So I'll have one part talking about the arguments for annual fee credit cards and one part talking about the arguments against annual fee credit cards. So as I said, let's go ahead and just start by talking about what an annual fee actually is and why you should care about them. Basically, all an annual fee is a fee that is posted to your credit card annually for every single year that you leave a card open. Of course, not every credit card has an annual fee, and the annual fees that do come on cards are going to vary depending on the card. But considering they are an added fee that you have to pay to hold your card every single year, of course, with a lot of people, they're unpopular. The fact of the matter, though, is that all credit cards that come with the annual fee are going to have elevated perks and benefits that come with that card to help justify that annual fee if it's a good card. So, of course, if you're the type of person that values having those added perks and benefits and would pay for those anyways, having an annual fee on a card is not something that's going to be detrimental to you, and it's honestly something you might seek because you know that those cards are likely going to be better than the ones with no annual fees. So now that I gave a brief explanation of what they are, let's go ahead and talk about an argument for having annual fee credit cards. I'd say the first and most important thing about the idea of having an annual fee credit card versus not is that you have to understand your goals in the credit card game. For example, are you somebody on team cashback, or are you somebody on team travel, or maybe a little bit of both? Because depending on your answer to that question, that will actually drastically change whether or not you may think annual fee credit cards are worth it for you or not. And what I mean by that is generally people that are on team cashback do not want annual fees on their cards, and people that are on team travel are definitely okay with having them and sometimes seek them out, as I mentioned. The fact of the matter is that if you are somebody on team travel, you are not going to get very far in the credit card game without applying for cards with annual fees on them. Now, I don't say that to say that you absolutely need to be looking for cards with annual fees if you're on team travel, but as I mentioned previously, annual fee cards are going to give you better perks and benefits than cards with no annual fees, and those added perks and benefits are going to usually relate to travel. So really the question then becomes, what credits and what benefits do you value enough to pay an annual fee for a card with those added to them? And what I mean by added perks and benefits is usually that annual fee credit cards are going to come with higher earning categories, specifically geared towards travel, like I kind of just mentioned, more protections, credits towards travel expenses, or maybe even just retail expenses as well as what is, in my opinion, the most important thing about annual fee credit cards, and that's that they have higher sign-up bonuses. But then again, you just have to consider which perks of those you actually value, because if you don't value having elevated travel earning categories, then having an annual fee card that gives you that really doesn't make that much of a difference for you. But if you're somebody that's already paying for global entry or TSA pre-check or a clear credit or something like that for traveling, then having a credit card that gives you a credit for those purchases could make that credit card a no-brainer for you, even if it comes with a high annual fee. Now, all of what I just mentioned normally applies to just general travel credit cards, but there are some specific travel credit cards that you could still get a lot of value out of that have annual fees on them. And of course, I'm talking about airline and hotel credit cards. So I just gave an example for just a general travel credit that might come on a card, that being global entry or TSA pre-check. But let's say that there's a specific hotel chain out there that you frequently visit. And let's say that on average, those nights that you pay for cost anywhere from $300 to $500 a night. There are plenty of credit cards out there that actually come with a credit of one free night a year for holding the card. And one in particular that comes to mind that can be super valuable for a lot of people is the World of Hyatt credit card. The reason I say that is because this credit card comes at you with a $95 annual fee. So if you're against annual fees, you're not going to want this card at all, right? But then if you start to look into the credits and benefits on this card, you'll realize that it comes with a free anniversary night every single year you renew the card that is valid for a category 1 through 4 hotel. And if one of those rooms would cost you $300 to $500 a night to book, then I don't know about you, but I'd be really happy by paying only $95 a year to get a free night worth $300 to $500. Of course, the same idea applies to airline cards as well. For example, a big credit that a lot of airline credit cards come with that have annual fees is going to be a credit for what is called a companion pass or a companion certificate or whatever the airline calls it. And I know a lot of people that can get this with Southwest, Access whenever you apply for one of their personal and business cards, and there's a whole strategy for that. Or a card like the Delta Reserve, which has a really high annual fee on it, but comes with a companion certificate that could easily justify that annual fee every single year by giving you a free plane ticket worth more than the annual fee. I think this video is also a great place for me to be able to give you some concrete examples of cards with annual fees and without annual fees later, and show you how you can justify the annual fees on those annual fee cards, as well as how you can get value from no annual fee cards that, might stack up to these annual fee cards. So for starters, on the annual fee side, since that's still what we're talking about here, let's talk about one of my favorite annual fee cards, which is the Chase Sapphire Preferred. Now this credit card is one of those general travel credit cards that has a low annual fee of just $95. And the first thing you might look at whenever researching this card is, well, what are the earning categories? What justifies that $95 annual fee? And you might be a little bit disappointed because the earning categories on this card, while they are good, probably do not justify the annual fee on it alone. However, this card does give you a $50 annual hotel credit that you can use every year through Chase's travel portal, which covers a little bit more than half of the annual fee on this card. But if you read into the fine print of this credit card, you'll see that you can also use it to transfer your points out to Chase's travel partners, which is what makes this card a keeper card for me every single year, even if I don't use that annual hotel credit or even put any spend on it at all. The same kind of idea applies to a more luxury credit card too, like the one I just added to my setup pretty recently, that of course being the Capital One Venture X. Now this credit card has a $395 annual fee on it, and a lot of people would just, write it off whenever they hear that before even looking at what this card actually has to offer. Once again, I have to mention that obviously this card is only going to make sense for you if you're somebody that travels, and that really goes for most annual fee cards out there. But again, if you understand how to use this card, then you can easily justify that $395 annual fee every single year. And the way that I personally would do this, just really quickly, is that this card comes with a $300 annual travel credit when you book travel through Capital One's travel portal. And on top of that, this card gives you 10,000 anniversary miles every single year just for renewing your annual fee. And even if you just value those credit card points at 1 cent per point, that travel credit plus those anniversary miles will give you a value of $400, making this card pay you $5 a year to hold it. And that's without even mentioning 80% of the other perks that this card has. Of course, that's not to say that every single credit card out there with a high annual fee is easily justifiable. For example, the Amex Platinum card is one of those cards that you might think that you should get if you like annual fee cards. And while you can technically justify the $695 annual fee that card has, because it comes with $1,500 plus of credits that you can use every year to offset that, if you wouldn't have used the perks and benefits that this card comes with before actually adding the card to your setup, then you can't really count that in lowering your annual fee because you're spending extra money to go ahead and get those perks. This is even amplified more when you talk about a card like the Amex Black card, which I actually unboxed in my video from Sunday, because that's obviously a card that, well, first of all, not any of us are likely going to get, or if we do, it's, pretty far down the line. But at the same time, that card has a $5,000 annual fee, and if you're not using their concierge service and stuff like that really frequently, then it could be hard to justify that. Then again, though, $5,000 to somebody with that card is really just a drop in the bucket. But to be honest with you, I really gave you all of those examples to help illustrate the point that annual fees really should be calculated not just by the face value of the annual fee that comes on that card, but more by the effective annual fee that comes on that card. And that effective annual fee is going to be specific to you and will not apply to other people necessarily. For example, on that Capital One Venture X that I just showed y'all, if you're somebody that does not want to book any trips through Capital One's travel portal every year, then even though you get those 10,000 anniversary miles, which still gives you a value of $100 at 1 cent per point, instead of your effective annual fee being brought down to -$5 with that $300 travel credit, your effective annual fee in that case would still be $295 because you are not somebody that wants to use the annual travel credit on that card. So while the effective annual fee on that card for me is -$5 with just those two credits alone, you can see how the effective annual fee for somebody else might be completely different and make that card terrible for them compared to another one that's, in the same class. Okay, I feel like for now that's enough of an argument as to why you might want to consider annual fees, being that you get the elevated rewards and perks and benefits. And I hope you understand now how to calculate your effective annual fee a little bit better. But let's go ahead and flip this on its head and talk about why maybe you should not get cards with annual fees, because that argument is completely valid as well. A lot of people are going to say you should never pay for a credit card no matter what perks and benefits it gives you, because that's just dumb. But in reality, a lot of folks in this category do not consider effective annual fees. They only consider the face value of the annual fees that come on cards. And at the same time, naturally, people on this side of the argument are going to be mostly on Team Cashback. But that actually is what I want to talk about here, because I think that you could build a super solid all-star credit card setup with just cashback credit cards and get just as much, if not more value than from a travel credit card setup, depending on your goals. Once again, going back to the very beginning of this video. In a little bit, I'm going to talk about the type of cards that you can use to actually build a great setup like that. But one thing I want to note here is that if you are on Team Cashback, Generally, what you are doing is making a conscious decision to not get the absolute maximum value you could from the credit card game because you're not using travel partners or just using travel credit cards in general. Then again though, the simplicity and the ease of use of a cashback setup may far outweigh the amount of value that you lose by not using those types of credit cards. And honestly, personally, I can see a day in my life where I switch to Team Cashback, basically fully with maybe one travel credit card to complement those cashback credit cards. Obviously that day's not going to come for a while, but I can see the appeal to having a setup like that. So I think the main argument for having cards with no annual fees is basically what I just mentioned. If you want simplicity and ease of use of your credit card setup, then being on Team Cashback is a very valid way to go. Then again though, as I said before, if you are on Team Travel, then you're not going to get very far at all without annual fee credit cards, depending on how you want to travel really. But if you are somebody on Team Cashback, there are a bunch of credit cards that you can get that add to your upside value without ever having to pay an annual fee. For example, basically all of the 2% catch-all credit cards out there have no annual fees on them. So whether you get the Citi Double Cash, the Wells Fargo Active Cash, the Chase Freedom Unlimited, the SoFi credit card, PayPal, MasterCard, what have you, all of those credit cards are really, really solid and have no annual fees. Another card that I talked about on my channel very recently is the Capital One Saver one. And honestly, that card is super, super powerful right now with all the benefits that it has on it, especially as it comes to Uber. But the fact that you can get 3% back on basically all of your purchases, plus elevated earning categories on things like travel through Capital One's travel portal or Capital One's entertainment, it just makes a card like that really easy to add to a no annual fee setup. Some of the other really popular ones right now would be something like the Citi Custom Cash, which gives you 5% back on your highest spend category every month, up to $500 of spend per month. And then of course right now you have cards like the Built MasterCard as well, that is the only credit card on the entire credit card market that gives you rewards for paying for rent. And just so you know, again, that's a no annual fee credit card that gives you those kind of perks. So while you can build a really solid cashback credit card setup with no annual fees and get by just fine, you can also add annual fee cashback credit cards. And the only one that really comes to mind right now is the Amex Blue Cash Preferred. But the way that you justify annual fees on a cashback credit card is very different from a travel credit card. The Amex Blue Cash Preferred does actually give you some credits, like a Disney bundle credit for $84 a year, as well as a $120 Equinox credit, which you're probably not going to get use out of. So for a card like that, the same kind of effective annual fee calculation goes into play, whether it's a cashback or a travel card. But there are a lot of cards out there like the Capital One Saver Rewards card with a $95 annual fee that don't actually have credits to help offset that annual fee. So the math that you have to do in that case is to see whether or not your spend is going to actually cover that annual fee for you and give you more value than a no annual fee card would. I did this math in the Capital One Duo video I made a couple weeks back, but for example, you could get the Capital One Saver one with no annual fee and get 3x back on your dining, your groceries, and stuff like that. But with the Capital One Saver Rewards card, you get an additional 1x back on things like the dining, entertainment, and streaming services, I believe. So you get 4% back on those categories compared to 3% that you get on the Saver one. And the math comes out to say that the break-even point for where the Saver Rewards makes more sense than the Saver one is if you spend more than $9,500 per year in those 4x categories, because at that point, the extra 1x you earn on that $9,500 worth of spend will cover the $95 annual fee, therefore giving you more profit after that point on the Saver Rewards card than you would have gotten on the Saver one. So of course, the math is just a little bit different for cards like that, but for the most part, with travel credit cards, you're less worried about the earning categories and more worried about what credits the card comes with. So now that I've talked about both parties, you probably have a better idea of what side you lean more towards, but let's go ahead and discuss my final verdict on this topic. That way I can kind of sum up all of my ramblings here and just give you a blueprint for you to be able to use in your life. My honest opinion is that annual fee credit cards are not bad. I think that a lot of people should be getting annual fee credit cards, but then again, you just have to know how to actually use them. In some cases with a credit card, even just one single factor could help you to offset the annual fee on that card, making it a no-brainer to add to your setup. For example, a card like the Citi Premier card with a $95 annual fee comes with a $100 annual hotel credit when booked through Citi's travel portal, which means that with just one credit, you're getting paid $5 a year to hold that card if you actually would use that credit naturally. But for other cards, you might need more than just one single perk to help you offset that annual fee. For example, the Amex Platinum card. On the Amex Platinum card, you're going to have to use at least like 4 or 5 credits to offset that annual fee, which makes it one that you really need to understand if you'll actually get positive value from or not by doing the math before you apply for it. Then again though, with that being said, I think again that you could build a really solid no annual annual fee credit card setup if you're somebody that's less worried about the travel rewards. And no matter what team you're on, I think that everybody should start with no annual fee credit cards for sure. While eventually you may want to graduate up to cards with high annual fees and awesome travel benefits and high sign-up bonuses and stuff like that, if you don't start with a solid foundation of no annual fee credit cards, then you could really hurt yourself down the line. I say that because if you accidentally open a credit card with a high annual fee as your first credit card and you're not able to downgrade it to a no annual fee version, you'll have to cancel your oldest credit card at some point, assuming you don't get value from it anymore. And that could really hurt your credit score because you're losing your oldest credit card account after 7 to 10 years or whenever that credit card falls off of your report. So while you may be somebody that's getting started and are just gung-ho about the credit card game and want these really cool premium credit cards, just realize that you need to play this game in a smart way and start with no annual fee credit cards to build your foundation. And while you might feel like you're missing out on some rewards by starting with beginner kind of credit cards, that is the only way to win the credit card game in my opinion. So play this game like it's a marathon and not a sprint. And heck, you might even find out through that process that you don't want cards with annual fees on them because you can get a ton of value from no annual fee cards. So really the steps that I think you need to focus on are: 1, figuring out if you're on team travel or team cashback. And if you're in the middle, that's fine too. But then you need to find cards that have credits and benefits that actually align with your spending, because that's the only way that you can get a really good effective annual fee, which is definitely the more important number than the actual face value of the annual fee on the lender's websites. And as long as you started with no annual fee cards and you're now working your way up to the more premium credit cards, if you're always calculating the effective annual fee on the card that you're about to apply for, I think you're going to do great in the credit card game. And like I said, if you end up in a situation where maybe you're not getting value from that annual fee credit card anymore, my recommendation would always be to try to downgrade it to a no annual fee credit card instead. And before you even do that, there's actually one way that you can get a ton of value from that credit card still before downgrading it or canceling it if you have to. And the way you do that is through retention offers. Luckily enough for you, I made a full video about how you can get a retention offer on basically any one of your credit cards that you can click on here to watch next. Also, if you do want to see some of the most popular annual fee credit cards on the market, I'll leave links for those down in the description below. And as always, Odin and I both want to say thank you guys so much for watching this one. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and we'll catch you guys next time.